I never believed in the supernatural. Not until that fateful night at the old hotel on the outskirts of town. I was supposed to be in town for a conference for work, and of course, I left it until the last minute to try and book somewhere to stay. After trawling through online listings and calling place after place, I found a listing for a hotel called The Haven. It had no reviews, but I assumed that no news was good news. People are normally more vocal with bad feedback than good. It was also a very reasonable price. So with some trepidation, I booked a room for the following day. When I approached the dilapidated building, it looked like it needed some real TLC. Rusted iron lettering hung about the entrance. It looked like this place must have been last renovated in the 70s or even earlier. However, I had little fight left in me, as I was exhausted from a 4-hour drive in the pouring rain. I had an important talk to give in the morning, so I needed sleep. Badly. So I grabbed my small case from the car and walked towards the looming building. Little did I know, I was about to enter a nightmare unlike anything I could have ever imagined. As I stepped through the creaking doors, a chill ran down my spine and an eerie feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. The lobby was dimly lit, the furniture covered in dust, and the air thick with a sense of foreboding. Ignoring the warning signs, you have no idea just how tired I was. There could have been a chimpanzee sitting at reception and I wouldn't have batted an eye. I made my way to the front desk, where a lone figure stood waiting. The receptionist was an old man with hollow eyes and a stooped posture. His voice was raspy and withered. Yes? The single word seemed to fill the whole room with a low drone. The rain continued to hammer down outside, rattling against the windows. I booked a room for tonight, Jenkins, I responded, with a slight lilt in my voice. Initially, I thought that maybe he hadn't heard me, as the elderly man sat perfectly still, his eyes locked onto mine. They were glassy, almost pitch black. As I was about to repeat myself, he put both hands on the arms of his old wooden chair and lifted himself up with a groan. He shuffled to the back wall, which was aligned with small boxes adorned with numbers. I was quite a superstitious person, so I was dreading him taking a key from the 13th box. As he reached his withered hand out, it hovered ever so slightly by number 13. Then, as if he could read my mind, he grabbed the contents next door. Shuffling back towards the front desk, he leaned over, handed me a rusty key, and whispered softly into my ear, "Room 12. Remember the rules." I nodded, eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere of the lobby. Clutching the key tightly, I made my way up the creaking stairs, the sound of my footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. I didn't see any other cars parked outside, so I wasn't sure if the hotel had any other guests. I wasn't sure if that was a good or a bad thing. Room 12 loomed at the end of the hallway. A small yellow light was affixed to the side of the door, casting long shadows onto the floor from the various pieces of furniture and ornaments that adorned the hallway. Sitting below the dingy light was the number 12 in copperplate writing. I dropped my case by the doorway and placed the key into the lock. With a creak and a groan, the lock eventually unlocked. Pushing open the door, I was greeted by a musty smell and the flickering light of an old lamp. The room was small and sparsely furnished, but it offered sanctuary from the storm raging outside. I'm also fairly sure that I was so tired I could fall asleep on a rock right now if I had no other choice. I quickly locked the door behind me, hoping to shut out the sense of unease that had been growing since my arrival. I placed my ear against the door and listened for several minutes, but nothing. I couldn't hear any other sound apart from the now howling wind and rain. There was no TV in the room, but I'd brought one of my favourite books with me from home. I could never get more than a page or two in before falling asleep, but ever since I was a kid, curling up in bed with a good book was one of the best sleep aids on earth. But as I settled into bed and prepared to read, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the windows, sent shivers down my spine. And then, just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard it. A faint scratching coming from somewhere within the room. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest as the scratching grew louder and more insistent. It seemed to be coming from beneath the bed, and with a trembling hand, I gathered my courage to reach out to investigate. What I found made my blood run cold. A set of rules, written in a spidery hand, tucked away in the darkness. They read as follows. Rule 1. Never look behind the curtains after midnight. Rule 2. Do not answer the phone if it rings 3 times exactly. Rule 3. If you hear whispering in the hallway, do not open the door. Rule 4. Always keep the lights on when you sleep. Rule 5. Beware of mirrors. They may show you things you wish you hadn't seen. Rule 6. Never leave your room after 3 a.m. Rule 7. Do not trust the shadows. They are not what they seem. I stared at the rules in horror, my mind racing with questions. Who had left them there, and what did they mean? But before I could make sense of it all, a sudden chill filled the room, and the lamp flickered out, plunging me into darkness. Terrified, I fumbled for the light switch, but it refused to turn on. And then, from the depths of the room, I heard it. The sound of whispers, soft and sinister, echoing all around me. As I huddled in the darkness, the weight of the rules pressed heavily upon me, their cryptic warnings echoing in my mind like a sinister mantra. I couldn't shake the feeling that each rule held a key to my survival, yet deciphering their meaning seemed an impossible task in the face of such overwhelming dread. With caution, I reached for the lamp once more, desperate for any source of light to push back the suffocating darkness. But as I flicked the switch, a sickening realization washed over me. The bulb had been shattered, leaving me stranded in the abyss with nothing but my rapidly fraying sanity for company. I tried to shut the voices out, but the more I tried, the louder they got. After mentally preparing myself for a few moments, I leapt out of bed and stumbled in the direction of the door. Luckily, I found the door at first attempt and fumbled for the doorknob. I tried to unlock the door, but it was no use. Too scared to utter a word, I frantically rattled the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped in here. In a desperate bid for salvation, I turned once more to the rules, hoping to find some semblance of guidance amidst the chaos. Rule 1 echoed in my mind. Never look behind the curtains after midnight. But what lay beyond those heavy drapes? And more importantly, did I dare to uncover the truth? As I approached the window, the fabric of the curtains, cold and clammy beneath my touch. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to flee from the darkness that lurked just beyond the threshold. But as I hesitated, a strange sense of curiosity gripped me, urging me forward into the unknown. With a deep breath, I yanked the curtains aside, revealing the world outside bathed in an eerie half-light. But as my gaze swept across the desolate landscape, I saw something that froze the blood in my veins. A figure, silhouetted against the pale glow of the moon, its eyes burning with a malevolent intensity. I recoiled in horror, stumbling backward as the whispers grew louder, their voices rising to a deafening crescendo. Yet amidst the chaos, a single thought burned brightly in my mind. I'd broken the first rule, and now I would pay the price. And then, just as I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, the phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the whispers like a knife. My heart pounded in my chest as I remembered rule number 2. Do not answer the phone if it rings 3 times exactly. But as the ringing continued, its urgency growing with each passing second, I knew I had no choice but to confront the unknown. As I picked up the phone, the whispers disappeared, being replaced by a deathly silence. All I could hear was a wheezing sound on the other end of the line, almost like I could hear someone breathing in a very laboured way. "Hello?" I whispered, and with that, the line went completely dead. I dropped the phone in horror, the silence in the room now more deafening than the whispers that had haunted me just moments before. I frantically played the list of rules back in my mind, trying to find a way to last the night. I was close to exhaustion and was running on pure adrenaline. Always keep the lights on when you sleep. The lights. There wasn't any light in the bedroom, but to my relief, I remembered that there was supposed to be an ensuite in this room. I remembered seeing another door close to the bed when I first entered the room. I fumbled around, feeling the wall. All I could hear was my rapid breathing and the heavy rain hammering against the window. After what felt like a lifetime, I felt a wooden door recessed into the wall. Grabbing the doorknob and urgently twisting, the door swung open to reveal yet more darkness. With my breathing growing even more frenzied, I searched for a light switch on the wall. As my hands scrambled, there was a distinct clicking sound, and the room was bathed in a bright, white light. It felt as if this room was my salvation. I dived into the small bathroom with urgency and slammed the door shut behind me. This could be my only hope of surviving the night. As I gathered my breath sitting on the cold tile floor, I pulled myself up using the old chipped basin. I needed to splash some cold water on my face to try and regain some sanity. As I put weight onto my tired feet and stood up, I came face to face with a dirty mirror. I reached out to wipe away the layer of grime obscuring the mirror's surface, revealing my reflection staring back at me with wide, frightened eyes. But to my terror, there was a motionless figure standing directly behind me in the mirror. I recognized it. It was the same figure I saw earlier when I gazed out of the window. I froze in horror. Looking around the bathroom with my heart beating out of my chest, I spotted a grimy towel hanging on the rusted towel rack. Inching towards the towel, trying not to move the rest of my body, I snatched the cloth and threw it over the mirror, covering it completely. I waited a few moments for my panic to subside, and gathering courage, swiftly turned around on the ball of my foot to look behind me. Nothing. At first I was too tense to fall asleep, my veins full of adrenaline. After what seemed like a lifetime, I collapsed exhausted back onto the floor, my back sliding against the door. I had to be safe in the light. I just had to be. Hugging my knees close to my chest, I closed my eyes, wishing for this nightmare to be over. I started counting upwards in my head, trying to take my mind off the terrifying ordeal I was going through. 1, 2, 3. I don't think I even reached 10 before passing out from exhaustion. As I awoke, I had an incredible shooting pain in my back and my legs had fallen asleep. But more importantly, I was alive. I glanced at my watch. It was nearly 8 a.m. I'd done it. I'd survived the night. Relief flooded through me as I realised the night of terror was finally over. pushing myself up from the cold bathroom floor and staggering to my feet. Every muscle in my body ached, but the pain was nothing compared to the overwhelming sense of gratitude that I'd made it through the darkness alive. With hesitant steps, I approached a bathroom door and pushed it open, half expecting to be greeted by the same oppressive darkness that had engulfed me the night before. But to my surprise, the room was flooded with warm golden light, casting long shadows across the tiled floor. I blinked in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how quickly the nightmare had come to an end. Had it all been just a figment of my imagination? A trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and fear? But as I stepped out of the bathroom, my eyes widened in horror as I realised that the room was not as I had left it. The furniture was overturned, the bedsheets torn to shreds, and the walls were covered in strange symbols, etched in what looked like dried blood. As my breath began to quicken again, my mind coming to terms with the fact that this was no hallucination, the room began to spin, and darkness closed in around me, swallowing me whole as I fell into the abyss of unconsciousness. When I awoke, it was to the sound of distant voices and the sensation of being carried. Blinking against the harsh light, I found myself lying on a stretcher, surrounded by paramedics and police officers. Questions tumbled from their lips as they peppered me with inquiries about what had happened at the hotel. But try as I might, I could offer no explanation for the horrors I'd endured, no rational explanation for the nightmare that had consumed me. As I was loaded into the back of the ambulance, I cast one final glance at the old hotel looming in the distance, its windows dark and foreboding against the pale light of dawn. And in that moment, I knew that I would never be able to forget the terror that had unfolded within its walls, that the memory of the haven would haunt me for the rest of my days, a grim reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of our reality.